The pandemic has focused more attention on the city's racial and economic divides, and that includes the digital divide. One response to that is a program developed by community agencies in East Boston to narrow the gaps in digital access and fluency, but also to help local residents find their way to new skills and job opportunities. To tell us about the initiative supported by the city's Digital Equity Fund, our guests from the community agencies from ZUMIX, the Director of Creative Media and Technology, Brittany Thomas, and from Neighborhood of Affordable Housing, or NOAA, the Resiliency Planning Coordinator, Latifa Ziyad. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks for having us.
Latifa, I want to start with you. I know NOAA's prime focus is on housing needs, but we're talking about the pandemic. People have been really hit hard on a number of fronts. So how does that sort of shake up the idea of what people need as far as bridging a digital divide?
Sure. I recently came here to NOAA, the Neighborhood of Affordable Housing, as the Resiliency Planning Coordinator. And one of the first things that kind of struck me was there are a lot of things outside of what I would stereotypically call resiliency, which mostly deals with climate change. Because of COVID-19, it's just all about how do you bounce back to the community and actually bounce forward. And so, looking at some of the inequities that are happening fiscally, this mirrors the climate change problems. And part of the problems are spared by things like people not being able to work and being able to respond. And if they can't get online to find a job, then you can see how it could trickle down. And if they're not able to access the same resources for school, you can see how it's a perpetual problem. So dealing with things like the digital divide is actually very much in the heart of the work that we're doing right here in East Boston.
Brittany, at ZUMIX, the main focus is creative skills and youth development, but you're another East Boston agency. You're trying to help people even with basics during the pandemic. What did you learn from the families that sort of shaped the ideas for this initiative?
Yeah, there were certainly a lot of challenges that we all faced this past year in accessing school. We were all kind of like de facto video producers and video consumers, not by choice. But there's also a lot of opportunity in that, right? To be able to say like, it is our life's work here to teach creative skills, and one of those skills is video. So how can we really use the moment to say, like, when we become video producers, we're able to engage in this way via Zoom in a new way, and we're able to absorb content differently, think about how stories are told, and develop creative skills that will serve us, adults and young people, like in many different realms of life in the future, whether that is a creative job as a producer, or whether that is just realizing that our voices are powerful, and practicing those communication skills that are necessary in many jobs in many fields.
Latifa, how could NOAA use some of this technological capacity to help people?
Well, first, charity starts at home and spreads abroad. One way, before COVID hit us, we didn't do any kind of Zoom. And now you see even your show is done a little bit differently. So not only do we have to kind of get acclimated to a new technology, but we have to kind of excel on how to use it well. And so this grant let us dress our classrooms so that we could do still remote learning, do some hybrid work that we've never done before. It helps us do our Technology Goes Home programs that we've been doing for the last 10 years remotely, which wasn't part of the framework previously, as well as do our English as a second language classes, because anytime you deal with housing, you have all these social needs that emerge from that. So it helps us keep the social back in order. The way that people are used to coming in and out, they may not be able to do it as fluently as of yet, but it's going to allow us to have new classrooms with new technology, just like any other corporation. And so it's going to help us be first class with that work and help us reach more audiences.
Going back to Brittany, one thing that's not entirely new at ZUMIX is that you're developing skills that are used in a creative economy. People making films, for example. Explain a little bit about that economy, because a lot of people in Boston might think, oh, isn't that located somewhere else? But what about that part of the economy that's here?
Yeah, yeah, there's a diverse range of jobs available in creative media. And in addition to that, like we've seen that every organization, every firm is tasked with telling the story of what they do, right? So these skills are very transferable. And I think more than anything, like we're capturing our curiosity of how to tell stories, and building a really strong community in the process of making them. Um, and so our video program is a little bit more fledgling. We have been teaching video and filmmaking here for a few years. And through this grant, we'll be able to deepen that program, to have programs that build on each other, so youth can really like take their skills to a next level and step one step closer to being ready for those intro level production jobs in the creative field.
But I can also imagine you've got musical talents, and people get to a certain point where they realize that they need some video to go with the music.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a hive mind over here. We got music producers and young videographers that are collaborating. And one thing that we specifically hope to do through this grant is to equip our space to be better at live streaming shows. So some of that happened organically. We were asked to do that several times when, live performance kind of dried up. And we want to be able to teach young people to do that, to be able to help artists out, and also other community organizations that have these new needs around how to share their work digitally.
Latifa, I want to come back to one of the categories mentioned here, which is workforce development. I mean, people have always needed that, but in the pandemic, we have all those setbacks in the hospitality sector. I imagine some people in East Boston were hit pretty hard by that. Could they end up benefiting from the opportunity here to sort of reposition themselves?
So this opportunity is going to bridge across many spaces. First, we have residents that might need to have internet that don't have access. Some of our residents are going to be able to get Chromebooks and internet. So this will help them to be able to get jobs. One of the things we found is that even though the city of Boston helped provide laptops to some of the families, they were programmed so that only the students could use them. So the household was actually essentially locked out of using the technology, even though it was in the home. And of course, with economic times, we've done a lot with food insecurity. So if people are worried about things like eating, they certainly don't have enough money set aside to also can maintain internet and all these other things. So we tried to make it so that people have easy access to internet and are able to do remote programming as well. So it goes the full gamut of resources. And one of the key things that overlap with my work in particular as a resiliency planning coordinator is that although those other industries are drying up, climate is expanding and a lot of money is coming down the pike in that way. So we're hoping that this kind of workforce access will allow us to tap into some of that climate ready jobs that are going to be coming down the pike.
Right. Coming back to Brittany, one of the other things I think both of the agencies do here is they change the chemistry of the neighborhood. You get people coming together who otherwise might not be connected at all. How do you see that being furthered by what's going on with this grant money?
Yeah, I think that's huge. Like probably the most important thing that we do, the place where we put a lot of energy. It's just how to build a really supportive network that is present right now in this really tough moment, and will be present in 5 years when maybe a young person is looking for that first job. And those relationships are pivotal in a moment like this, to know like what we need, what we can offer each other. And that happens all over East Boston. And it certainly happens within the East Boston community. And we're really lucky to be a part of a very strong neighborhood.
But Chief, I want to come back to the concern about climate, which is especially acute in East Boston with the potential for flooding from rising sea levels. But getting that mix of people connected, what does that have to do with changing this global problem about climate change?
Well, I mean, obviously, East Boston, because it's close to the water, used to be islands. Now it's more like a peninsula. We deal with flooding kind of a little bit more head on than most of the Boston communities. We did a summit. We've done a series of summits actually around climate change. So we've been on the ground asking folks how are they coping with this, what their perceptions are, and what they've experienced. And now we're taking, all of that data and we're connecting networks so that we can have plans, so that we can have, discussions that are happening ongoing and build coalitions around some of our strengths and patch up some of our weaknesses. So the technology is essential for us to stay connected. I mean, we have people in some of our classes that only have a smartphone and can't participate with a computer. So this is going to allow us to kind of help with that. This is also going to allow us to help some of our first-time homebuyer program recipients as well. So we're doing a lot more work remote, and so we have to equip ourselves inside, but we also have to equip the networks outside to receive the information.
And Brittany, you have all these young people who, through most of the past year and a half, have been pretty isolated in a strange way. How is it for them getting reconnected?
Yeah. Um, yeah, we've really felt that, and this summer we were lucky to be able to do our first in-person experiences again. And so we had some classes that were continuing to meet remotely and some that happened in person. And our creative filmmaking class was one of those workshops that got to happen in person. And really, we just wanted to embrace the joy of being together. And so we went to Eastie Farm and we recorded audio in the gardens, and we went to the ICA watershed and did a video scavenger hunt there. And so producing media is a very social experience, and we try to embrace that at every possible chance we can. That we want to make something cool, but also we want to enjoy the process and we want to build strong connections through making.
It already sounds like a recruitment pitch. So if anybody wants to find out more about ZUMIX, how can they check that out?
You can find us at zumix.org, also on social media. You can find some of our student work there. We just had our graduation celebration last night, which was really beautiful. And we'll have new programs starting up in October, and hope to be even more in person then. So,
Latifa, you have to match that. People want to find out about NOAA.
Well, you can do fun things like come to the STEAM program in East Boston this weekend, where our NOAA youth organizers are going to be doing Family Feud climate change. That's a fun way to and connect with us. Or you can just go to noaacdc.org and check us out and look for those applications to come out so you can apply for some of our digital funding support.
I'd like to thank you both very much for joining us and sharing the news.
thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
That was Latifa Ziyad from NOAA and Brittany Thomas from ZUMIX.